It's the first day of November. Thank God. October was just hellish. Hi everyone, I'm Dana Drakeford, nuclearproctologist.org. And you can call in if you like. It's 709-589-4406. A lot of numbers, I bet. I know. I'll leave it up there for a minute. So this is day 2 of United Nations Corporation, rather known as United Nations. And they got their fingers in all facets of humanity worldwide. They got climate change in the World Health Organization, World Trade Organizations. They got IAEA and UNSCLEAR, IRPA and ICPP, and they got all kinds of organizations. They can't stand you living. They need to be in your life and surrounded, controlling every facet of your life. Have you noticed that, or is that just me? What was it George Bush Sr. called them again? Oh, yeah.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
UN. So the UN is the new world order. Well, that's upsetting. Have you seen any of the models of the radiation fallout covering the planet from Japan's multiple nuclear reactors melting down? There's one there, and pulses energy every second. Just imagine if you had a snowstorm covering the planet at the one time. And just snow keeps building up, and you can't get outdoors because it's so much snow everywhere. Radiation is the same thing, except you can't see it or smell it or taste it or hear it or touch it or feel it or pick it up or throw rocks at it. Or what it does is it pulses energy every second. All the way from the ocean floor to the surfaces of the oceans. You can see both the Pacific and the Atlantic. Now the model stopped there, but the plume doesn't stop. It's still melting down. So, are you going to get an electric car to help with global warming? Yeah. I bet you didn't know that one massive container ship is equal to 50 million cars. And then 15 of the world's biggest ones is equal to all the cars on the planet. But your car is killing the planet. Don't forget that, okay? There's 96,000 of these cars on the planet at any given time, or these ships out on the ocean at any given time. That's equal to 42 trillion people on the planet every day. Automobiles, right? Oh yeah, so they're slashed and burned that one. What's going on there? Always something with this gear, isn't it? Leaders dial up doomsday warning at COP26. I cut off the 6, look at that. I'm just a klutz today, man. Leaders dial up doomsday warning. Doomsday. Did I mention Fukushima radioactive fallout? There's your doomsday. It's killing all the species. It's an invisible blanket of death covering the entire planet. World leaders have turned up the heat and resorted to end the world rhetorics. Rhetoric. For British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, global warming was a doomsday device strapped to humanity. Boris got all these cliches, since yesterday. since everybody accused him of being lazy. Now he's got all kinds of cliches. You think he wrote any of them? Does anybody think Boris can actually write? United Nations Secretary General Scumbag told his colleagues that people are digging our own graves. Johnson, who was hosting the summit in Scotland city of Glasgow, the Scottish, Dana, not Scotland. I know, I was just messing. Likened an even warming Earth's position to that of fictional secret agent James Bond. Strapped to a bomb that will destroy the planet and trying to work out how to defuse it. I doubt if Boris Johnson can tie his own shoes, let alone have a fantasy like that. He told leaders that the only difference now is the ticking doomsday device is not fictional and is 1 minute to midnight, which is the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientist narrative, right? 1 minute to midnight, which is right there. What radioactive fallout from Japan is heating up your planet. The site is full of the evidence, the entire site. Remember, get electric cars. That'll save the planet. Don't stop these ships that create more pollution than all the cars on the planet, just 15 of them. So imagine when you got 15 of them going past your city, burning it at the full steam ahead. So he said the threat is climate change triggered by burning of coal, oil, and gas. Well, first off, oil and gas and coal and carbon don't pulse energy every second. Only thing that pulses energy every second is Fukushima radioactive fallout. That's a model of it there. 19 days later, it's still coming out. It's a continuous plume and never stopped. That's global warming. Carbon, gas, oil, coal emissions don't pulse energy every second, don't create plumes like this. Have you ever looked at the planet Earth? It's a big planet. It's huge. It's incredibly big. And we're covered now in radioactive fallout. Probably forever. Long past the human experience anyway. And he pointed out that all started in Glasgow with James Watt's steam engine powered by coal. So you can see the rhetoric and the desperate brainwashing, how it actually works. It's coal. Don't listen to Drakeford. Don't listen to Drakeford and these radiation fallout. I didn't make all these models, by the way. These are all government agencies and universities worldwide. I'm just telling the story and I'm providing the documentation. I know that makes me a bit of a criminal this day and age of perpetual lies. The other goals for the meeting, the main goal for the meeting, is to give the United Nations $100 billion a year and they'll dole it out as they see fit. The rich nations are not going to give the poor nation the money. The rich nations are going to give United Nations, this corporation, all that money. So imagine the interest on $100 billion. Because that's all they're going to spend is the interest. They ain't going to spend anything else. Climate envoy, well, they'll steal the rest of it, for the Marshall Islands on hopes, fears at COP26. Now, the Marshall Islands, this is a study. In 2019, I think it was, 2018, showed over 1 million square kilometers severely radioactive. Radioactive fallout from the testing, aka nuclear wars, the same bombs, the same radiation, contaminated over 1 million square kilometers, pulsing energy every second. What Japan done was it radiated the Pacific Ocean in 7 days from the floor to the surface. That's permanent. The Bikini Atoll climate envoys from the Marshall Islands. A World Bank report shows that if the ocean levels rise a meter, and they have nuclear waste the Americans have buried on the island, and I can't remember, 80,000 tons or something, that they were able to recover. You got to realize, like Castle Bravo in the Bikini Atoll, that bomb, Castle Bravo, single bomb, had the same amount of radioactive fallout as 1,000 plus, and it's definitely way plus, 1,000 Hiroshima 15 kiloton size nuclear detonations. Like 1,000 Hiroshima bombs going off at one time. A single bomb. That radiation has been flying around the planet ever since, heating the planet up. All the fuel pools and all the reactors are hemorrhaging radiation all the time. And so there's 440 reactors hemorrhaging radiation because they're still splitting the atom. See, people say, well, you got nowhere to put the waste, but that's just all they say. What's the problem with the waste is it's splitting the atoms. Instead of powering 1 million homes for a few hundred tons, that's splitting the atoms into the environment with no containment. So in the reactor, there's a containment, but at some point they got to change the fuel, usually after 16 months or so. And that releases all the radiation. That's why they bring in 1,000 external workers to do that, temporary workers. COP26 are gone green for the sake of my grandchildren. BBC running a story like that, who had Jimmy Savile. He molested, the real number is well over, it's around 1,300 children. Like 3, 4, 5 years old, and 10 and 11 was his prime targets. At the BBC. And molesting being the worst case scenario. At the BBC. They're disgusting. So you got a useful idiot who don't know any better, bought into the propaganda. It's like, oh yeah, I've gone green for the sake of my grandchildren. I got me electric car. There's 15 container ships with 96,000 on the ocean at any given time. 15 of them produces more pollution than all the cars on the planet. But that's what they're bombing you with. Oh, you gotta get electric cars. Especially Boris, man. Have you ever seen the picture of him before he was elected prime minister? Promoting Fukushima peach juice? Hang on. You never know. Might get lucky. Might not. Everything's possible. Hang on. Oh, yeah? Here's Boris Johnson promoting food from a nuclear wasteland, promoting peach juice from a nuclear wasteland before he got elected. The problem is, if you actually drink stuff from the radioactive nuclear meltdown, it's going to make you very, very sick. How sick is it going to make us, Dana? Well, hang on there. Give me a second. I'm not Superman, you know. The problem is that a single atom going in your body that's anthropogenic, man-made, can cause a cancer, but a cancer is just one of 1,800 illnesses. And just a single atom or particle, and the atom's full of particles. So that's a problem, and we know it's a problem because it's just a tiny amount. Because you used to have 1 in a million to 2 in a million children in Japan with thyroid tumors. Now it's 358,000 out of 1 million children, which is in a study that's unprecedented of 13,646 out of 40,000 children with thyroid tumors, mostly girls, of course, because radiation destroys the female population, when it used to be 1 or 2 per million. This is incredible numbers. And the industry, the despicable nuclear death cult, not industry, nuclear death cult, that is an industry, by the way. No matter what position you put Boris in, he still looks like a moron. But his whole legacy is just humiliating. British Prime Minister has warned that climate change is like a doomsday device. He's just going around with these slogans, eh? Rainbow Warrior, this is a really strange story. Rainbow Warrior was given a go-ahead to sail the COP26 after it was turned around by port authorities. So what they done now is typical of this disgusting bunch, is they got some children from different parts of the world on their boat who don't know jack shit about the real story, are easy to manipulate, calling them climate activists. Climate activists. The strangest planet I ever heard tell of is this one. So, I'll give you an idea what I mean by that. Greenpeace, if Greenpeace had said that this reporter is not in the fuel pool in that building, the nuclear industry would be dead right now. That's Fukushima, what's left of a 190-foot building over there. The fuel pools are at the top of the buildings. And she's going to pretend she's in the fuel pool. Greenpeace refused to call her out, but I sent them depictions of documentation no less than 100 times. They still refused to acknowledge that this happened.
We are here inside Reactor 4 at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant that was severely crippled during the earthquake and tsunami of 2011, leading to the country's worst nuclear disaster.
So she's not in a building in Japan. Right? She's actually not there. Port authorities wanted to block the famous vessel from entering the area because all vessels are banned, but they were allowed to continue after the captain of Greenpeace went and talked to the port authorities. Not only did they allow him to continue, they gave him an escort. Follow a meeting with their female captain, the ship's captain, told her they would help facilitate the 4 youth climate activists' arrival. So they're weaponized against humanity now, is what they got done. You're seeing right there's evidence of it. You know, besides the actual evidence. Like the significance of pretending the building don't exist might evade some people, but trust me, it's extremely significant. Time to do the right thing, negotiators told, as COP26 climate talks opened yesterday. And this is the National Post. They're despicable, controlled opposition, by the way. Under heavy rain, the Conference of Parties 26 summit starts in Glasgow. Wild weather complicates the arrival for some delegates. Wild weather. There was a single tree blocking the trains. And instead of getting the tree out of the way, everybody had to get off the train and go get taxis, cars, or airplanes and head on their own. Britain's notorious, terrible authority down there. They're lunatics for nuclear. With the UK host warning, they got Sellafield in the United Kingdom hemorrhaging 8 million litres of mixed oxide fuel contaminated water into the Atlantic Ocean for 70 plus years. 8 million litres a day. And that facility is surrounded by farms right up to the fences. All the radiation from the nuclear meltdown landing in the farm doesn't scare you? With the UK host warning that lights are flashing red on the climate change dashboard. Yeah, there's going to be a year of slogans, I can tell right away. UN Climate Chief Corporation, known as UN, one of their positions, they call themselves a climate chief. She's not a climate scientist, I wouldn't trust climate scientists because their solution is always more nuclear power. They were created to promote nuclear power, that label climate scientist. Patricia Espinosa, who doesn't have any background training in any of this, that she's admitted that the task of swiftly shifting the world's economies into a greener tech trajectory. Now, I've been covering the last couple of weeks leading up to this, and it's been this constant, non-stop, brutal bombardment that nuclear power is the solution for the climate meeting. And I've got those presentations already on my site from the last couple of weeks. The transition we need is beyond the scope, scale, and speed of anything humanity has accomplished in the past. It's a daunting task, but humanity is a species defined by its ingenuity and stupidity. By the way, don't forget that one. Carbon markets. Reminding them to think of what we're trying to achieve together and trust and invest in euro by billions. So they're saying billions of people are praying that you do the right thing, spend more money, give it to the United Nations rather. These are lunatics. This is nothing but a big Ponzi scam. We have run out of excuses. Time to give us all the money you got, said Shahid, also foreign minister of the Maldives, a nation of low-lying Indian Ocean islands. Last 7 years have been the hottest on record, and sea levels rise reached a new height in 2021. Yeah, which was what? So you get the last 7 years are the hottest on record, but then you stop right there. The last 7 years, you mean since Fukushima, 10 years ago. All this has happened. Huh. You don't suppose you got something to do with it? Mayor Frank Cowie of the U.S. city of Des Moines, his Midwestern city in the U.S. state of Iowa. Some mayors now, when they go down there, they're the arbiters of the planet's facts. More extreme weather in recent years, including 10 inches of rainfall in just 3 hours, and hurricanes like 130 mile per hour winds. These are from Fukushima radiation heating up the planet. This is another model of the radiation from Japan. This is heating up your planet. It's pulsing energy every second. And unlike snow, it doesn't go away. It doesn't turn into something useful like water. It poisons your water. It poisons your trees, your pollen. It poisons your entire planet. Now you go back and look at this legacy of nuclear. This is 3 or more nuclear clouds. So 3 or more nuclear bomb blasts blown across America. This is a model. This is absurd what you're looking at, these models. And so nuclear meltdowns are not a cloud going across the country. They're a constant cloud covering the entire planet at the one time, continuous plume. And it leaves so much radiation and so much radiation floating around all the way in upper tropospheres, all the way to the ocean floor, pulsing energy every second. All your forests are saturated with radiation, you know, same as the ocean. And so last year, they brought the equivalent of renewables of 300 nuclear power plants online. Currently, there's 440 nuclear power plants. So imagine bringing on the equivalent of 300 nuclear power plants in just 12 months versus a nuclear plant typically is 10 to 20 years to bring a single one online. And you got to get every natural resource on the planet and destroy it permanently by radiating it. Not only that, there's 440 plants on the planet, and they all pulse or release radiation from their fuel pools, and they don't have a repository anywhere on the planet. They don't have a spot to get this stuff out of the environment. It's still splitting the atoms. That's hemorrhaging worldwide into the environment. Not counting all the dumps, all the nuclear testing, all the nuclear buried in the ground that's finally leached out. It's just the whole story is disgusting. So those who argue which is all of the media, by the way, that we absolutely must construct more nuclear plants to beat the climate emergency are clearly lunatics. Each nuclear power plant needs at least 2 oil, gas, or coal plants just to run. They've been lying to you now straight for 76 years. So renewables, what you do is you can store energy. And there's been 500,000 places found worldwide where you can have pumped hydro naturally, where you just pump water up a hill, and when there's no wind or sunshine, the water comes down the hill with the excess energy that you got. And it's the same with compressed air storage. So wind or solar, you can take your extra energy and store it for extended periods in compressed air, low pressure, 120 psi. So you can have a pumped hydro and compressed air. This is mass storage of a level batteries will never, ever, ever be able to reach, because we'll be exterminated if we do learn to smarten up. So one massive container ship equals 50 million cars. There's twice a whistle tonight. What the hell is that all about, I wonder? You know what they say, you got to wet your whistle? Maybe that's what's going on. I got to wet the whistle. So one of these ships is equal to 50 million cars worth of pollution. But you better get a green rechargeable car, electric car, which are cool. Don't get me wrong, they're cool, man. But they're not killing the planet. They're not going to solve the problem. The problem is nuclear, not carbon. Carbon doesn't pulse energy every second. World's 15 biggest ships create more pollution than all the cars in the world. 15! With 96,000. Not counting the militaries. Right, you see how they burn fuel. They actually use more fuel than most countries. And there's no emissions for the airplanes. I don't know if you noticed it, but your skies are full of emissions from airplanes. The coming surge of rocket emission. By the way, the emissions from your airplane, you're not able to mimic that with factories or industry. They're totally unique. The emissions from airplanes, go look up models of airplane emissions over, say, United States, and you'll see satellite pictures from emissions from airplanes where you can't see the country for most of it. It's absurd how many airplanes are in the air at any given time. Canada and Russia and China, it'll blow you away. It'll blow you away. So when you think of emissions, look back through the history of how much pollution just a few big military industrial complexes like Russia and China and everybody else is doing this, right? Just a long legacy of sending, and there was an incredible legacy where they just blew up everything before they finally got it up into space, releasing absurd amount of very, very dangerous fuels and chemicals into the environment that at a high elevation were carried worldwide, deposited worldwide, destroying insects and birds and mammals and animals and humanity. You had all the high altitude nuclear explosions. You got the military industrial complex uses more fuel, for instance. Just B-52 Stratofortress, which is up to 24/7, every hour burns the same amount of fuel as a car would drive in 7 years. It works out to, for 24 hours, they burn the same fuel as 1 million cars in 24 hours in your upper atmosphere. They fly high, see? That stuff could take decades to wash out because there's so much of it. It's saturated. What I mean by that, if you stop flying right now, it will still take decades of their pollution. Absurd pollution, too. Them engines are not very efficient. It's a scumbag industry. So I noticed that Greta Thunberg wasn't surrounded by police today in all the footage. She showed up, the British police, that's what you want to call them, bobbies, lunatics, cowards, morons. They should be arresting the United Nations for a Ponzi scheme. These incompetents circled her, you couldn't get, and turned it into a circus. Now, Fukushima had a massive nuclear meltdowns. This is one of the models. So the radiation covered the entire planet. You can see the date up there, right? 25th. So March the 25th, radiation covered the entire Pacific, the entire Atlantic, all of Europe, all of Canada, all of the United States. But if you let that model go on for another 7 days, it covers the rest of the planet with a continuous plume. With a continuous plume. Let me get out of the way here. I'll play that one more time. This is radiation fallout from Japan modeled by France. This is very dangerous on just the atomic levels. So, you see how the radiation covers the continents? Everything on the east side of the Rockies will wash down also towards the Atlantic. Everything on the west side of the Rockies wash back towards the Pacific Ocean. So we launched expeditions from Vancouver, British Columbia to Alaska year after year. And they were very difficult times, incredibly difficult work. We're leaving Port Hardy. That was the top of Vancouver Island. Let me see. We're going to shoot across Queen Charlotte Street. So what I done was, we're just coming off the shore. I took the fleet up the coastline. Year after year, I've done this research. And bear with me, we'll get there. And what we discovered was all the species to the right, as you can see, are missing. That's the same place. And so we've done the whole coastline year after year after year. Repeated the research expeditions. And what we discovered was all the species to the left never came back. Me and my trusty sidekick, Zoe. And she died of a heart attack a couple of years back at the age of 15. But she was first on the beach every day, that dog was, man. She was really something. She was just incredible joy. So you can see to the right, the species are missing. And the species to the left, you'll never be able to take those pictures again. They're gone permanently. They're gone because of the radiation fallout from Japan. And I went back year after year. Those species are exterminated. That's an extinction event. That's not carbon. That's not coal. That's not oil. That's not gas. That's Fukushima radioactive fallout. Exterminated all the species. Now you can pretend that that didn't happen, but that's all you're doing. You're just pretending. I actually went there, documented the same places, and you were warned that nuclear power plants threaten mass extinction around the world. That's not a salacious headline. That's a desperate warning to this planet from media that we better do something and stop Fukushima. The problem was we didn't try to stop Fukushima. These species are now exterminated. All of those species are exterminated. All the whales that are showing up, by the way.
Hey Zoe, a little too rough out there.
All the whales that are showing up are emaciated. All the birds that are showing up are emaciated. This was a typical day, year after year. It was miserable. It was just a miserable experience. But we're trying to find out if this was real, if Fukushima was actually an actual event. And that's what we discovered. Fukushima unequivocally was an event. So, like, when you see people protesting, that's great, but research is important too, right? They didn't do the research I done. The very, very tiny group of detractors out there about this are industry. They hide away like incredible cowards. I don't hide away from anybody. Britain needs the 21st century mini nuclear reactors, not just revamped old ones. First off, the mini nuclear reactors don't exist. They're paper reactors at best. It'll be decades and decades and decades before there's such... If they went hard at it, it'll be probably 3 decades before they actually have so-called factories. Way past the 2050. This is a nuclear industry created the problem in the first place with Fukushima radioactive fallout, and now they're trying to pretend that radiation is the solution, so you don't blame them for what's going on. These people, their entire legacy is predicated upon lies, deception, misrepresentation, pure deceit, and genocide, ecocide, and omnicide, which is something you won't hear from the activists at the Conference of Parties 26. You're not going to hear any activists acknowledge what's really going on here. Summit kicks off in Glasgow. Here's what's at stake. Global news. 2 weeks of intense diplomatic negotiations. What are they talking about? Diplomatic. See, this is scary. You got a couple of hundred people at best that they're not elected by the planet to do this. They're not appointed by the planet to do that. They don't even have the education to quantify their input from this. And United Nations has facilitated this because that's what they like. That's why they got all the kids that are protesting, because the kids aren't able to articulate the issue. There's a big, right? And if the kids find out, though, about nuclear, and they start learning a little bit from my site, so they know what the lies are, nuclear is done. A crucial UN climate summit, and I can retire and let them take over. A crucial UN climate, crucial. Why is it corporate? It's like McDonald's is having a meeting and that's considered crucial for the whole planet, or Walmart is having a meeting now and it's crucial for the whole planet or something. They're framing a narrative as if United Nations are the arbiters of facts or ideas, for instance, right? As UN officials gravelled the climate summit, UN officials, they are not officials. They're not our kings, they're not our queens either. They're a corporation that is structured, and you give people a job and they get a label as an official for in the company itself, not for me or you, but inside. Like Walmart officials are not somebody that's going to come and say, like, Dana, you're going to stop that. You can't go mowing your lawn today. I need the water from my land. You know what I'm saying? That's their idea. I shouldn't say that, but they're not officials per se, right? They're officials in a company, that's That's what United Nations is. They're a company. They're a corporation that have a charter. They don't have sovereignty over Canada, United States, or any other country. They're just a company. And so inside the company, they have a designation where they can call somebody official. But outside the company, they're not officials. You get what I'm saying? And the media, which is captured a long time ago, is framing the narrative so that the kids look at them as officials, even though they have no sovereignty over those people. And same as Patricia Espinosa, the head of the UN Climate Office, which is a part of the company. She's a head of a division in a company. Right? They're not a government agency. They're not a... You know what I'm saying? Even though George Bush Sr. at the beginning, I showed you him calling them the New World Order. Their job is to slowly take over everybody's countries and be dictators to everybody's countries. It's the damnedest thing imaginable, but it's only can only happen with the media being complicit, with the media putting them on a pedestal and framing the narrative. And so the same story, the same pictures, the same paragraphs, the same author will show up worldwide in all the media. That's how it's done. So everybody's stuck with this one narrative unless they find people like myself. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of people like myself out there that are 100% honest and are providing the documentation. There's lots of people who will just do radio shows where they tell you whatever they feel like it. I don't tell you nothing. I show you the documentation. It's a big difference, right? There's an incredibly big difference. A hotter, harsher world. A hotter world is caused by radiation pulsing energy every second. Gas, oil, coal, carbon doesn't pulse energy every second. It can't heat up the planet. And radiation, that can heat up the planet for sure, because it lasts for millions of years. It's pulsing at the speed of light almost, just shy of the speed of light. So gamma, alpha, neutrons, beta emissions pulse almost at the speed of light. Think about how much energy it takes something to do that every second. So these atoms are like little nuclear engines being propelled around all over the world constantly because they're pulsing energy at the speed of light every second, up to 50 feet away. As you can see, my Geiger counter will read it, right? You see that thing go crazy last night at the end of the show? Wow. The G20 countries represent more than 3/4 of the world's climate-damaging emissions. No, the emissions are radiation fallout. That's the emissions. It's a continuous, never-ending plumes covering the entire planet, pulsing energy every second. Right? They're trying to frame this narrative so it's coal, right? And then the solution to coal, getting rid of coal, is nuclear power. But all nuclear power stations, for starters, need at least 2 external power supplies of coal, oil, and gas just to run, but they're hemorrhaging radiation. They're not efficient, and the waste is still splitting the atom 75 years later. 75,000 years, a million years down the road, nuclear waste will still be splitting the atom. That's the problem. So when people say, oh, you haven't got a solution for waste, they stop right there. Well, what's the problem with the waste, though? Well, it's toxic. No. What's the problem with it? It's still splitting the atom. So every day, trillions of atoms from each fuel pool, per liter sometimes, is being boiled off into the environment, and most nuclear power plants are surrounded by farms, which sucks in the radiation. Which is weird because they have tons and tons and tons of studies. So why are all the nuclear power plants surrounded by farms? There's even Chalk River surrounded by farms. Farms, even future ones, farms, surrounded by farms. Do you think that's an accident? Now they know for a fact that these farms are going to suck up radiation. They unequivocally knows that that's the stupidest thing you can do is surround something like that. You won't see coal plants surrounded by farms or oil plants or gas plants because carbon makes plants grow, by the way. Foliage and soil uptake of radiation by grapevines, radiation uptake by strawberries, by wheat, radiation uptake by tomato plants, fruit plants, as a monitoring system, potatoes, you name it. They know how plants will suck up radiation. So why are the nuclear power plants surrounded by farms as far as you can see? Why do that? Well, because you eat the food from the farms and that poisons you. That's what they're up to. So I know that probably sounds incredible to some people, but you shouldn't be. Like, here's a future power plant in the United Kingdom, surrounded by farms. Not even built, and the depictions are showing them surrounded by farms. So that's a genocide machine is what that actually is. Climate change. The leaders of two of the top climate change polluting nations. The biggest polluting nation is Japan. It's not carbon, oil, gas, and coal that you're going to worry about because that doesn't pulse energy every second. It doesn't heat up the planet. Carbon, you can't live without carbon. Plants, insects, and animals can't live without carbon, for goodness sakes. Fukushima radioactive fallout is global warming. Not maybe, not almost, not it might be, it is. Biden's, whose country is the worst and biggest climate polluter. Look, Fukushima, like all the nuclear testing, that was climate change. That's where it started, from Hiroshima, Nagasaki, all the way up to today. Because it never goes away, and we're just adding to it all day. You got to close down all the fuel pools. You got to find a repository to stop that from splitting into the environment. But the problem was, and they knew this a long time ago, was that if you try to store the fuel rods in containment, because it's still splitting the atom, it'll displace all the oxygen. And if you introduce oxygen into that environment or a spark, it'll detonate. And then everything is melting down to a China syndrome, creating plumes like this every day for millions of years. See? So they couldn't store it. They knew this. But they were so greedy, and they were put in a position of so much authority and power, they refused to give up the position. So they hid all the dangers. And this is a death sentence for our planet. We got 21 likes with 470 new subscribers because you took down my other channel. And I'm such a terrible person, being honest. And let's bring up the poll here. My apologies for not getting it up front and center. Will the world regret letting Conference of Parties 26 set the agenda for humanity and 8 million species? So we got 34 votes, 100% yes. We only got 22 likes. I'm being censored, incredibly horrific censorship on this site. Because the lobbyists, nuclear lobbyists, are embedded in, so is the military lobbyists embedded with Alphabet, which is what Google's owned by, is Alphabet, right? That's their main company. Not Google. Google's not the main company, or YouTube. It's Alphabet. Biden's country is the world's biggest climate polluter. No, nuclear is the biggest climate polluter, period. It's a genocide machine. It's a doomsday machine. Climate efforts, climate summit, climate envoy, 2015 Paris Accord is when you've seen the narrative of climate change go berserk. After Fukushima, for the first 4 years, climate change, you never heard that in any of the narratives of the mass species die-offs or anything else. That showed up in 2015. And then Trudeau's father, his father worked for a French, the biggest company in France, as most premiers in Canada have before they were the prime minister of the country. And so were the premiers, rather, of the provinces. And the prime ministers of the countries, like a presidency. Environmental campaigners are expected to stage loud and creative protests during the summit. Loud. So, like, they'll go loud. That's not really true. They're being brainwashed into even going there. The majority of them are just regurgitating the corporation known as UN, their narrative verbatim. I run an educational program. Environmental campaigners. So, like, you're instantly labeled if you show up there, you're an environmental campaigner. Scum. You scumbags. Conference of Parties 26, London to Glasgow trains delayed or cancelled after a falling tree. Not trees. All the headlines are the same, just a tree. And they don't have these big, massive trees in Britain, by the way. And they could have took a chainsaw and got it out of the way. Just, everybody wait, we got a part of the track, the team is coming over with a chainsaw and we'll be on the trail again here very quick. No. It's the strangest. They're trying to make it look like the environment is melting down. No time for delay. So you can see that's a digital board you're looking at up there. So that's going to be just a doomsday message over and over and over. You got to give them $100 billion a year. Extreme weather on the first day. Sense of hope needed on climate change. Extreme weather knocked down a tree. Sense of hope needed on climate change. Yeah, they got children worldwide are so brainwashed from this constant bombardment from all the media that their tin cans and their pop bottles and their cardboard and their petrol cars is the problem, right? And that the planet is, you're not going to grow up, there'll be no future, there'll be no species, blah, blah, blah. This is true, though, if you get rid of coal, carbon, oil, and gas out of the equation, and you put nuclear in there, then it makes sense, right? And it's pulsing energy every second. That's a plutonium model from TEPCO after nuclear meltdowns. It doesn't go away for 24 million years. It's 240,000 year half-life, but there's no such thing as a half-life. There's 10 of them. So when you first hear the narrative half-life, they'll talk about iodine 131. Oh, it's got an 8-day half-life. And you're like, that's gone in 2 weeks. But it's actually got 10 half-lives, and that's the one they confine with the Geiger counter. So then they do a mathematical equation, and they extrapolate all the other isotopes with millions of years of half-lives. It's an incredible scam, that the industry's got. Now, if they tell the truth, the whole world will wake up. They can't stop lying. Now they're perpetual lawyers, whether they want to or not. They can't tell the truth because there is no one out there that will tell the truth in the industry. You'll be assassinated before the next morning. The Global Climate Change Summit by a corporation that has no authority outside of its building. No authority. If you're on the sidewalk, they have no authority whatsoever. The only authority they got is inside the company to their employees. And their employees can tell them to bite me and walk away anytime they feel like it, by the way. must deliver a sense of hope for people for the future, Wales' first idiot has says. Action from world leaders. So if you take people that were elected worldwide, all of a sudden, they're the arbiter of everything. This is absurd. This is such a stupid, dangerous path to be on. Actions from world morons who murdered and deceived and lied to get their position would inspire confidence in the public to make changes in their own lives, they claimed. No, they want their $100 million. They don't give a shit about anything else. They want $100 billion, rather, a year from 200 countries. And they're going to go out. We've heard this before endlessly. And they've been at this for 75 years. They're never going to go away. They're monsters. They're firmly entrenched in most countries now, have made legislation that gives them billions of dollars a year anyway. Canada gives them billions each year. A corporation that George Bush Sr. described as the New World Order. Talks are set to get underway in Glasgow to try and curb global warming. How are you going to stop the radiation, huh? How are you going to stop the global warming? You're going to go yell at it? Going to send it to its room after supper? Right, so you got Poppy Stoll, young people at the Global Summit. So they got these people that really want to do something, who don't understand the bigger picture, and then they thrust them into the middle of it. Here, look at this person. Here, listen to that person. They regurgitate our narrative perfectly. This company known as United Nations is telling everybody. Define the language that is used alienating. Prime Minister Boris Johnson, the scum of the scums, has said the conference must mark the beginning of the end of climate change. He's got lots of slogans right out of the gate since yesterday, doesn't he? All the way up to yesterday, he had never had a single slogan. Now the media's just regurgitating slogan after slogan. The Welsh government is part of Under Two coalition, a group of 260 states, regional governments that will be represented at the conference. Why don't they have their own conference? You don't need a corporation like McDonald's or Walmart to tell you what to do you? Are you that stupid? You got to go have a corporation tell you what to do. You should lose your jobs, every one of you. You're obviously not qualified to be in positions of authority if you think 260 municipalities in Scotland have to wait for United Nations to tell them what to do, who has no sovereignty whatsoever over Scotland, who are just a corporation. When the planet is burning, that isn't somebody else's problem. Right. It's burning because of the radioactive fallout from ongoing nuclear meltdowns that nuclear scientists have never went to. That only the homeless and the destitute and the victims of society, the immigrants who don't speak the language, are tricked and deceived and manipulated and coerced into going to and getting murdered. And then they're disposed, rejected like a dirty paper towel when they get sick. No health care to take care of them. No benefits to support them. Just thrown away on purpose by this despicable, coward, scumbag nuclear industry. This hateful, degenerate, monstrous industry known as nuclear. And so I can barely get 33 people on a presentation, let alone these COP26, right? The numbers don't change no matter what I do. It's the same numbers. 30 maybe. If I'm really lucky, I'll get 30 people in my show. I've been doing for over a decade. So there's a lot of work to get 30 people. If you work for a whole decade, you too can have a big following like that. And everybody gets unsubscribed when you subscribe to me. And so this video right now, right there, is not able to be embedded because I forgot to go in and turn it on after the show went live. I have to go in and turn on embedding feature. Otherwise, it won't stream on anybody else's site. Allow embedding. See that? Gone. So now if anybody starts embedding my video on another site, but I'll show you what else they got done to my channel. Just bear with me. So this is yesterday's video. So when you scroll down with this video, you do the same thing, show more. And watch what's going on here. I can't publish to subscribers feed and notify subscribers. That's turned off. And I had to go in after the show last night and click on allow embedding. So I have to do it 3 times. I do it when I originally put up the preamble. Immediately I have to go back in and check the box again. And when I go live, I have to go again. And I can't publish the show after to my subscribers because Google won't let me use that feature on my new channel. That they took down my other channel with 24,000 subscribers. So most people would have quit and give up a long time ago. But I don't have the right to do that. You know, with all the research, all the documentation that I've covered over the years, this is not a game, this is real. Fukushima is the issue. Nuclear is the issue. And they're promoting nuclear like parasites for the Conference of Parties 26 this year. And at 2015 too. COP26 formally opens in Glasgow as leaders look to address climate change. But radiation fallout is climate change. This is another model of the Fukushima radioactive fallout. That's the Pacific Ocean over there, the Atlantic Ocean right here. The model stops on the 4th month, January, February, March, April, the 4th. But the radiation never stopped coming out. The plume doesn't stop. So don't ignore what you're seeing in the plume. It's 1,000 times worse than that. It's 100,000 times worse than that. Yeah, they're insane, right? So yeah, contamination is spread more than just Japan. It's spread all over the world for sure. So Tokyo is heavily contaminated. 6 in 10 Fukushima children got diabetes. They're expecting diabetes in children from Fukushima. And so Stanford Publication says, were TV experts paid to say that Fukushima was a small leak when it was the largest in the world? And I showed you reactor 4 earlier. There was 4 reactor buildings melted down. And all the fuel pools at the top of the buildings detonated and lost the entire inventories out of 3 running reactors and 4 or 8 fuel pools, 2 in each building at the very top of the 190-foot reactors. And the propaganda is just absurd. But this radiation is spread around the world. So it's not just cesium, it's not just xenon-133. There's over 1,000 kinds of radiation fission products. So when you see a plume of xenon-133, it's going to be saturated with the other 1,000 isotopes. They don't travel individually. Adapt to the hotter world. Now, we've seen that in the last week and a half or so, that narrative, a little bit last month, but now we're seeing that show up regularly, a hotter world, a hotter world. Well, gas, oil, coal emissions don't heat up the planet. Carbon doesn't heat up a planet. The only thing that can heat up a planet is radiation. It pulses energy every second, heating up the planet. Pulsing energy every second. Boris Johnson lashes out at world leaders at G20 falls short on climate. Yahoo's gone crazy since yesterday. They're gone insane on pushing this narrative. I mean, they're gone. It's crazy in the search engines. They're everywhere. And they're just taking all the other media's report and just posting it again. Canadian Climate Group sees big reason for optimism at Conference of Parties 26. So why is all these countries, instead of doing their own work, going to give all their money to a corporation known as United Nations with all kinds of subsidies, subsidiary companies, like the World Health Organization and United Nations, IAEA, etc., etc. So why is everybody bowing down and kissing the rings of people in a corporation? What's next? We all going to go out and lick the boots of McDonald's if they start up an organization like this? Are you going to go around and lick the soles of the boots of officials from Walmart next? The world's got too many officials. And scientists now, what's the point, right? So there's not a lot of professors on this planet compared to, say, doctors or nurses or whatever, firemen or whatever. Professors are a very exclusive group. There's not really a big percentage. Because most of the propaganda comes from these professors. Yeah, where to? Hang on, wait for it. This might find a bit disturbing. So when you start looking at professors as, say, criminals, you start realizing there's a disproportionate amount of them. Convicted assault and batteries professors, convicted of raping 13-month-old babies. Research becomes rape. Professor convicted of drunk driving for a third time. Convicted of falsifying retirement assets. Attempted theft by swindle professor. Sex crimes professor. Ex-Ivory League professor convicted in wife's death is freed. Professor convicted of exposing himself to multiple women. Convicted of poisoning his wife. Professor and wife convicted of fraud in a almost $1 million NASA contract. Professor convicted of spying. Convicted of arms exports. Medical school, Harvard Medical School, professor accused of abuse. The psychiatric professor was manipulating his students into having sex with them for grades. Professor is convicted of sharing technologies. Convicted in child porn case. Convicted of defrauding their students. Millionaire ex-MIT professor convicted of staging his own death. Former Harvard professor convicted of stealing $600,000 from a Hong Kong jewelry magnate. convicted of embezzlement. You see where I'm going with this? There's really not a lot of professors, all things considered, but they're hardened criminals, every one of them, for some reason. A law professor, convicted of sex for grades, a law professor. So they know what they're doing is wrong, but they go ahead and do it anyway. Convicted of grant fraud, convicted of defrauding national science foundations, convicted of first-degree murder, Kansas State University professor, convicted of faking vandalism. He was going around scratching cars. No, this was anti-Semitic. He was going around spray painting anti-Semitic racist slurs, and then too traumatized to go to work. Jewish professor convicted of marketing child porn. So these people know what they're doing is wrong. You know what I'm saying? Convicted of vehicular manslaughter. Convicted of scrawling polite graffiti on luxury cars, causing thousands of pounds worth of damage. Another one with a screwdriver. Child pornographies. Hong Kong professor convicted in yoga ball murders. Murders with an S. Convicted of abusing little boys. Multiple little boys on top of that. Killed his wife with cyanide. It just never stops, does it? $650,000 from a student's fund. MIT professor convicted of staging a shooting. Drug houses, defrauding the schools and students, and convicted of setting fires. Hard cases, eh? Hardened criminals is more like it, Dana. Business professor convicted of tax fraud. He doesn't know the difference, does he? Convicted of assaulting 3 girls. I'm trying to get past it. Harvard professor convicted of defrauding couple. Hardened criminals is more like it. Early childhood professor convicted of child porn. Early childhood professor. He was a... So it shows you a lot of these positions, people like... There's no end to that list. I'm just going to go to the end of it, keep going here. It's a huge list, right, of professors committing hideous crimes, monstrous thefts, insidious abuses. So now we're going to turn to them for solutions, are we? And all their students of those people should get their money back and have to go back to college. Prince Charles, who has 150 servants, to tell the world leaders they need to be on a warlike footing to tackle climate change. And I got to go home now to get a manicure. Get my 3 p.m. manicure. Have a nice day. All right, Lottie. Prince Charles got 150 servants. And he's going to talk about you should cut back on your tin cans, your pop bottles, and your cardboard so he can enjoy his 150 servants. Do you think he has any connection to the real world at all? Every day in his house, there's 150 servants. The global elites flying private jets to the climate conference, to the big party. There's 25 or 30,000 delegates, like mayors and stuff like this. Because if you bring all these people in, right, you get them all together, they're all feeling high and mighty. They all got their communities, they're gone to the climate change conference with United Nations. This corporation is like McDonald's and Walmart or Tutti Frutti. Thank God Tutti Frutti had a climate conference this year. Very green. Biden had an 85-car motorcade, and he had 2 massive jets come in with Homeland Security and everything else. Secret Service. Totally carbon free though, Dana. Uh-huh. And G20 was the precursor to this gala. This is a big party for these people. They're going down there to party like it's 1985. That's all this is. It's just a big party. And then they got all the kids there who got sucked into this narrative. They know something wrong with the planet, but they can't point their finger at it. That's why they like the kids, because the kids are not going to go around with science showing Fukushima radiating the ocean, okay? The kids down there are not going to go around with big banners saying Fukushima radioactive fallout could be global warming. Here's a link to the nuclear proctologist. Go check it out. And they're like, oh shit, this is actually real. And I'm winning with 34 viewers on my site. It's amazing. What did I ever do to get 34 people watch my show? That's like incredible, Dana. See, the problem is if nobody watches the video, I still got to do the video because I can't live with myself if I don't try. I have to try. And Lord knows I try. I never stop. Imagine if we had 100 people like me out there. It'd be all over, but they're crying, wouldn't it? Well, that was the idea. I always felt that I can educate enough people that a percentage of them would take the documentation, they can extrapolate, the truth from that easy enough. I provide you with the documentation and educate you with just a couple of videos. Typically, you should be able to extrapolate the facts yourself. See? That was the theory a decade ago. Something like that. Conference of Parties 26 begins as countries plan future actions on climate change. This is all propaganda. Future actions. Alok Sharma. So he's the president this year of the climate conference for a corporation known as United Nations. Whoopie-doo. Congratulations. Where's your next job? At Walmart? At McDonald's? You can be the president of McDonald's Toilet Association next year. You watch. Conference of Parties 26, what G20 leaders agree on coal, methane, and net zero. First off, climate change is coal, oil, gas, carbon, doesn't pulse energy every second. The only thing that does that is radiation. These are models of radiation fallout based on venting, not based on nuclear meltdowns. If you go back in my site and you look for Fukushima, what is Fukushima nuclear meltdown videos, or even my first 17-minute video on this site, explains to you what Fukushima is. If you're not familiar with it, it might help you anyway. But radiation is your problem. Radiation is your enemy. Nuclear is your problem. Climate negotiations by a corporation known as United Nations can't solve something unless you actually address the problem. You do realize this on this planet. At some point on this planet, you're going to say, you know what? I think Fukushima is the problem. Crap, we're so behind now, we'll never catch up. But see, you got to stop Fukushima because it's still hemorrhaging radiation. You need to go back and watch my What is Fukushima videos on my site. And if you're not willing to do that, you get some cheap food from Japan now, from the half of Japan. I won't eat food from all of those prefectures because I'm not stupid. But if you think Fukushima is harmless, you go ahead and eat all that and do the world a favor and drop dead. Yahoo again. Like Yahoo's gone nutty the last 2 days. Conference of Parties 26 must not be a greenwash summit. Must not be a greenwash summit. So Yahoo is a lobbyist group, right? They promote whatever company is going to throw money at them. They'll go create stories and promote whatever it is. Not voiceless, but unheard. Meet the youth activism underway to Conference of Parties 26 on the scumbag Rainbow Warrior. Not voiceless, but not educated. They're great children, bless their hearts, for trying to do something good. But you're not articulating what the problem is. You're going to go down and regurgitate the same narrative as everybody around them. And you're all very, very impoverished on top of that. You're all coming from very impoverished communities. You come from impoverished families. You probably feel like kings and queens because Greenpeace has outfitted you with winter clothing and gave you pocket money and is treating you to pictures and photographs and blogging about you. It is disgusting. It's a form of slavery. It's a form of prostitution, what they're doing to these kids. Our young activists, 4 young activists are sitting in Greenpeace's warehouse. That's not a good way to start the story off. I don't know if anybody ever told them. But they got these young activists who don't know what an activist is. They're just listening to United Nations and say, well, I want to help. And in the future, they'll all be working for United Nations because they were such useful tools for them. Boris Johnson admits to the G20 net zero plan is too vague and warns progress is not enough. Boris Johnson can't even form his own thought about how to get around an obstacle in the hallway. He has to bang into it first, and then he works his way around it, see? Time for diplomatic niceties over if the world is to be saved, says the corporation's Secretary General. They're a Secretary General for that corporation. Now, if they quit that job, they can become Secretary General for Walmart or Secretary General for McDonald's, right? Or Canadian Tires, or whatever company they want to work for. They're just employees of United Nations, that corporation. All of these people from United Nations that are being put on a pedestal as if they're volunteers, they're not volunteers. They're paid for everything. It's a vacation for them. Conference of Parties 26 Summit, realizing the suffering of the earth. If you want to realize the suffering of the earth, you got to look at the actual problem. Problem is Fukushima is still melting down. 10 years of damage, as I showed you earlier in the video from the research expeditions, is not a game. This is not a game, okay? The world is dependent on you. On you. Not me. On you. You're the scariest thing in the world if you will speak the truth. You are the most terrifying thing on this planet to the industries if you tell the truth. The industry can't handle anybody that's articulate. UN Climate Unchanged Conference 2021. Lots of graphics and pictures. The corporation that goes by the name of United Nations is now trying to run the planet. That's what you're seeing here. They're trying to run the planet. You got to give me $100 billion a year, and I'll do 100 million times better than they will, for sure. First thing is we build jails for everything in the nuclear industry, and then big wood chippers. International Environmental Convention to address human interference with the climate system, in part by stabilizing atmospheric greenhouse gas concentrations. So this is very technical what they're talking about. They're talking about changing the environment. They're implying that they're going to change the environment. So how are you going to stop this radiation? How are you going to get that out of the environment? Do you realize how big the planet actually is? But one thing you can do is you can stop Fukushima ongoing nuclear meltdowns. Maybe. Who knows? Almost 200 international. So how long has that been going on? We'll get through it. Almost 200 international leaders and 30,000 delegates are expected to go there and lick some boots. Yeah, the M5.2 quake hit northeastern Japan. And you can see where it hits on land, which is on the Japanese scale. It's registering a 4. They don't say it's a low 4 or a high 4, because their scale is 7. So you take 7 divided into the international scale of 10. You got 1.428 for every Japanese one. So it works out to a 6.4 earthquake. See an anchor mocked after arriving in Japan? In Edinburgh, yeah, he went to the wrong town to cover Wolf Blitzer. Despicable scumbag Wolf Blitzer. Trudeau launches plan to double down on emission cap for oil sands. Biden calls on allies for actions. And this is another coward. This is pro-nuclear Globe and Mail. They're pumping uranium stocks for 10 years straight. Pumping it 3 times a week, 4 times a week. And uranium stocks have dived. They were artificially inflated last month by stouts here in Canada. They artificially inflate the stocks so they can sell some. So investors will spend their money and then the stocks will dive again, right? 10 years of it. Nuclear industry is disgusting. Quitting coal is not easy in some countries. Coal's not the problem. Fukushima radioactive fallout is the problem. It's pulsing energy every second, covering the entire planet. And how's the poll doing tonight, Dana? I don't know. Let's check. Will the world regret letting Conference of Parties 26 set the agenda for humanity and the 8 million species? We got 40 votes. 95% says yes. We got 33 thumbs up. Thank you for participating. Earth desperately needs people to stop burning coal, the biggest single use of greenhouse gases. But it's not. The biggest greenhouse gas is radiation. It pulses energy at the speed of light every second. It's covering the entire planet. Coal, oil, and gas and carbon doesn't have those attributes, okay? They can't heat up a planet. And so you're just going to get that same narrative in every single story is what you're seeing, hopefully, as I'm showing you tonight anyway. This is a well-oiled, well-greased, desperate propaganda machine that's going to try to convince everybody. And the people that are going there already got their mind. They're players. Their job is to go there and pretend that they're worried and they're trying to learn what's going on here and they want to come up with solutions, right? That's the complete opposite is what's really going on. They're there to party for 2 weeks. They're there to party. And they're all going to try and convince people in their country to throw $500 million into the UN count every 12 months. Now, if you divide it down, that's a staggering amount of money every minute going to a corporation. It's a staggering amount. And this corporation is the evilest thing I've ever come across. It's spent years and years and years meddling with country after country after country. And now most people think that the United Nations is the kings and queens of the planet, so to speak. They think they should be in charge of the entire planet. That you and your country is too stupid to look at it or do anything on your own. You can only do whatever the memo from United Nations tells you to do for the rest of your life. And your countries are throwing billions of dollars each at it. So when you look at Trudeau, you really want to, when you look at this for Canada's side, You want to go read an article called The French Connection, Who's Who of Canuck Politics. And it's basically every former prime minister in Canada for decades have worked for Paul Demaris company in France. And most of the premiers of the provinces have worked for the same company. It's worth reading. It's an eye-opener. You can see how Canada actually doesn't even exist anymore. How will success be measured at this year's climate summit? Well, if everybody gives the United Nations $1 billion, you're going to call it a success. You know that? To get $100 billion a year, that's a success. That's their success. This is a stick-up. And they're not going to do nothing to solve the real problem. The real problem is Fukushima radioactive fallout, covering the planet with radiation, pulsing energy every second for millions of years, heating the planet up. That's your real problem. And then you got all these buffoons put on a pedestal, having the time of their lives. Brazilian indigenous people tell Conference of Parties 26, you need us to solve climate crisis because of their rainforest, right? It's being devastated. So, it's true 100% that their rainforest is being devastated, but that's a police action you need for that. You need police to step in and arrest those people to put a stop to that. Reaching out and pretending that United Nations now is going to do something is lunatic. This is ludicrous. It's ludicrous to utilize a corporation, a single corporation, now got sovereignty over every country on the planet? You don't think that's not a stupid idea for some reason? Well, it is a very stupid idea. Boris Johnson will take a domestic flight home. So just while you get on your plane and fly it back, you flew your big presidential prime minister plane there, special plane for you only. And because of criticism now, you're going to take a domestic flight back. So that plane is going to fly back empty. That's the logic of United Nations, see? Climate change, a challenge faced by agricultural countries. Every country is an agricultural country, for God's sakes. Not just India. No more time to hang back, says Biden. Where's my Alzheimer's medication to him? Why would anybody want to listen to Biden for? He's literally Boris Johnson's excrement. How green are climate summit's key sponsors? Yahoo News, right? Yahoo Sports, Yahoo blah, blah, blah. They're gone lunatic in the last 48 hours. I mean, literally gone lunatic on us in the last 48 hours. So we got, 11 more days of this conference? So I got to do 11 more shows in a row? Oh my God. I got no choice. Somebody got to come out. So maybe I should just do, when they're doing their TV presentation for 8 hours each day, maybe we should stream that and we'll do it live, right? And we'll get rid of the sound and we'll show you documentation to counter the lies. I'll be burnt out in 11 days after that stuff, I bet you. But hey, who knows, right? Day 2 of the G20 summit as Climate of Parties, or Conference of Parties 26 opens. World leaders converge upon Glasgow, except for, Russia and China. Climate scientists. They were created to promote nuclear. And we've been battling them now for over a decade because of Fukushima. Oh, well, planet's heating up. We better get more nuclear out there. There's 300 power plants where the renewables came online last year. There's only 414 active nuclear power plants. And they're not nuclear power plants, they're disease factories, they're cancer factories. Climate finance could make or break, so the $100 billion could make or break Climate Conference of Parties 26 summit. It's not a summit, it's a corporation having a big party looking for massive handouts rather than putting the money where it needs to go to come up with solutions for Fukushima, ongoing China syndromes and nuclear meltdown. They're going to just pretend it's not happening and keep growing food and shipping that worldwide, exterminating everybody. And then 1,000 years from now, the government of Earth will be the UN. So Vice President Harris is pitching U.S. climate action. What's she going to do, stop the military for 24 hours? No. She's going to travel to Queens, whoopee, to pitch heavy-duty electric trucks. Well, 15 container ships produce more pollution than all the cars on the planet. "15 container ships. I showed that at the beginning of the show. Climate change is ravaging the world, Biden tells the summit. World leaders meet for last chance. World will try again to avert climate disaster. That's the Weather Channel, scumbag Weather Channel. Incredible, they've been pumping climate change narratives since Fukushima. Like it's a second job they all have. An incredible honor, 2 Edmonton youths heading to a corporation's climate summit. So if you get invited to McDonald's parties, is that an incredible honor too, I wonder? Because that's the same thing. How do you spell gullible? Called CLIMATECHANGENCOAL. Climate Change Summit talks fall off on the start after a week G20 leader meeting. So they didn't set the agenda. This despicable human trash there, the current president of the climate for a corporation. The great coin toss in front of a fountain in Rome. Yeah, if you don't feel like an idiot doing that, what? Can you imagine how pathetic they are in real life? Imagine, like, if you try to have a normal conversation with them, you would call the police and say, these people are crazies. Prince Charles, of course, he's got 150 servants home. He should just shut his mouth. He's so disconnected from reality. You got 150 servants. 150 servants. You think that you have any connection to reality, you're delusional. Protesters heckle Alok Sharma, the current president of this corporation's climate division. A couple of years he's going to be president of Walmart and president of McDonald's, I guess. The elephant in the room is Fukushima. Show you that one more time. Fukushima, radioactive fallout covering the planet, and the continuous plume of radiation is what's causing global warming. Oh yeah, when you think about 30,000 delegates, useful idiots, and 120, 200 scumbags, what's the word for it? people that are running your country part of the political agenda, they're not really running your country, right? They're trying to, well, not trying to, they're elected to give away all your assets, your water, your mineral rights to corporations, and your monetary, and to keep the genocide machine known as nuclear medicine murdering you in the hospitals. You get sick from the radiation covering your countries, you go to the hospital, and then they murder you with more radiation. That's called Stockholm Syndrome normally. You're going to go let the murderers murder you. Like I showed you earlier, I've done the expeditions. That's the expeditions. I've done the research, and the evidence shows this is an extinction event. Fukushima is an extinction event. The corporation known as United Nations' job is to piper you away from the truth. Right? Don't let you see anything I'm showing you. So you don't put that into the equation. Because you can't rule out what I'm showing you. And that was done by the radioactive fallout. Wiped out all the species on the coastline of Canada and Alaska. And I'd done the expeditions year after year after year after year on that coastline, 4 to 5 months at a time on the ocean without coming home, doing the research. And I can assure you, unequivocally, that 27,000 islands up there, there was no insects on the island, no spiders on the island, no birds on the island. There's an 18-foot tide exchange. It was completely wiped out. It was wiped out, and the research is up at my website at thenuclearproctologist.org. And so, since they took down my main site with 24,000 subscribers 2 months ago, while I was on an expedition 450 kilometers into the woods, and no strikes on my account or something like that, no warnings, no email, they just closed my site down. And if you went to my old ULRs, there was no explanation why the site wasn't there anymore. It just said this site doesn't exist. It was 1,600 of these types of presentations, and the research expeditions, right? All the research expeditions were on that site. They took all that down too. All of these research expeditions, that was all taken down. So all the documentation like this is all missing now. But I put pictures, the original pictures of the entire coastline up at my website of the whole coastline. It's naked for sure. It's an extinction event. I show you these pictures because that tells the story to your left, what it was pre-Fukushima and post-Fukushima, right? All of it's due to radiation fallout. That's what caused this extinction level event. And so tomorrow will be day 3. So remember, one ship of these ships is equal to 50,000 cars. 15 of them creates more pollution than all the cars on the planet. 15 of these ships. So if you're going to try to stop some of the damage, you definitely want to deal with this. There's 96,000 of them on the ocean at any given time. That's equal to 42 trillion people on the day when you scale it up, right? You can have stored, big storage is easy. You use pumped hydro or compressed air for storage. Pump hydro, you're going to pump water up a hill. And at the same time, you can also have compressed air storage where you dig big mine shafts and you have low power, low pressure air compressed in there to run your energy when there's no wind or no sunshine. See? The solution's right at your fingertip. All right, and you got to deal with the problem. The problem is Fukushima radioactive fallout has contaminated the environment and our oceans. Until you're willing to admit what the problem is, you will never have a solution. So I want to raise $100 million, $100 billion each year. So if just one of those countries gives me $100 billion each, or $1 billion each year, I'll wreck the nuclear industry for you. You won't have to do nothing. Just sit back and watch them die. The nuclear industry is humanity and 8 million species' worst enemy, is the nuclear industry. So we're going to close down the poll. Will the world regret letting Conference of Parties 26 set the agenda for humanity and 8 million species? We have a resounding 95% said they're scumbags. 95% says they're the degenerate scumbags. And 95% is close enough for me, baby. And so since you took down my site, it's pretty hard to raise enough money to keep this operation moving forward. The links are in the bottom of the descriptions if you never donated before. There's only 2 ways to donate. Both of them are in the description. And I would love to have $100 billion a year. I just need 1 year, and I can wreck this industry, and we would come up with solutions. We'd have contests to actually come up with solutions. Good night, everybody. Let me come up and start at the top there. Ella. Good night. James Lucid. I'll make it bigger. Hi, James. How you doing, buddy? Dana Nasana. Hi, Dana. Invisible Rabbit. I only serve one king. Hi, Lori. Good night, everybody. Truth Fruit. Ted Richards. Port Angeles. Mutant Botanical Garden. Katja. Good night, everyone. Ann Mansfield. Hi, Ann. HTML Sam. Patrick. Victor. Hope everybody's doing good. I missed a few people last night again. I don't know why it is. It's because you got so much at the end of the show to keep on top of, I suppose. It's pretty weird, though. Just a quick shout out to everybody watching this tonight, tomorrow, sitting back. Hi, everybody. Hugs for everybody. Hope you're doing well. Colette S. Hi, Colette. Thank you. All the way down. Kevin Blanche was dropped by. Nice to see everybody. Lots of people chatting in the comments section. We had a few attacks in the last number of hours before the show went live, which is unusual around here, actually. We're shuttered away into the dark corner of the internet where nobody can find us. Anna C. Shane Clark. And I don't blame people if they don't watch the show regularly. It's got to be difficult just to watch it once. I'm gone to war. I don't know about anybody else, but I'm gone to war. I've been gone to war for a very long time. This is a war, and let's not make no beefs about it. We are at war with the nuclear industry. They have gone to war against you. At some point, you will reciprocate, I'm sure. James Oldhand. Hi, James. Thank you. Yeah, hugs for everybody. We're back for day 3 tomorrow. I might just do a live show all day long. Who knows tomorrow? And stream their show and and analyze what they're saying, the propaganda in real time. Who knows? I'll do whatever it takes to make this planet better. There's nothing I won't do for this planet, for you and your friends and your families, your loved ones, and the 8 million species on the planet. There's nothing I won't do. I will work, and I do every day, relentlessly, so you can have a future free of this misery, cancer, disease factory known as nuclear industry. Good night, God bless, hugs for everybody. See everybody tomorrow night. Take care, folks. Yeah, it's on TV and the internet, James. Vote. God bless. Good night, everybody. See everybody tomorrow. You're welcome, Cough. Take care, folks. Tim Norris, Thinker, Ted Richards. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up, folks. We'll see everybody tomorrow night. God bless.